Dear veterinarian, students and farmer, Assalamu alaikum and very good afternoon. Welcome everyone to 27 discussion on nutrition and immune function of dairy cows with emphasis of mastitis, organized by Udder Health Bangladesh. I am Dr. Delwar Hussain from Sher-Bangla Agricultural University with you to facilitate the discussion today. Our today's speaker is Dr. Paul Gobler from Netherlands. Currently, Paul is working as research and education assistant under Department of Farm Animal Health at Utrecht University in the Netherlands. The Paul Dobbelaar has been working at the Faculty of Veterinary Medicine in the Utrecht University since 1979. At the time, he started as a research assistant at the Department of Veterinary Medicine and Outdoor Practice. As a result, Paul has always worked in the field of nutrition and animal health. Over the time, he has been involved in many projects and interned with many dairy farms. He has visited dairy farms all over the Netherlands. Dear audience, our today's session, we have several distinguished colleagues as discussion from home and abroad. They will contribute to our discussion. We have a guest, Professor Dr. Abdul Samad Sir, former Dean and Director, Maharashtra Animal and Fisheries Sciences University, and he is also dairy consultant in India and co-founder of PetWire. We are pleased to have Dr. Shafiqur Rahman Shoshi Sir, Associate Professor in BCS Livestock Academy under Ministry of Livestock Sciences under Government of Bangladesh. He is also a renowned dairy consultant in Bangladesh. Our another colleague, Dr. Saiful Bari Sir, Associate Professor and Director of Farms from Chattogram Veterinary and Animal Sciences University, he will join later. Our other guests are Dr. Shokanta Bomi, Deputy Manager, Cattle Feed, Kaji Farms Limited, Bangladesh, and Dr. Ridwan Pasha, Assistant Professor at Chittagong Veterinary and Animal Sciences University. Pasha will join later. I'm requesting to our distinguished discussant to limit your discussion into 2 to 3 minutes. We will get additional time to ask questions to our today's speaker. Finally, our today's session will be coordinated by Professor Dr. Mizanur Rahman Sir from Sibasu, and he is the coordinator of Udder Health Bangladesh. Dear audience, our today's session will be live on official Facebook page and YouTube channel of Udder Health Bangladesh. I'm requesting all to share the program in your Facebook timeline so that every people can join the program and enjoy the program. Furthermore, audience also can join our discussion by sending your questions in the comment box. Our guest will answer your questions during question answer session. Before going to the presentation, I would like to invite Paul Dobbelaar to give his presentation to us. Now, Paul, the floor and time is for you.
Okay, now thank you very much for your nice introduction. I remember we went to a farm here in the Netherlands. I hope you enjoyed it. Okay. I think you give, yeah. Can everybody see this? Okay, yeah. Okay, so we are going to discuss effects of nutrition, about immune function, and we have emphasis on mastitis. So as you can see here, there are many aspects of the diet that have an effect on immunity and consequently on the chance on getting mastitis. So we will briefly discuss all those aspects, and finally I will include some aspects that are not discussed, but so they will be listed. Otherwise it would take too long, but you can always find in the literature more background on that. So we will start with metabolic diseases. Here we have a picture that shows that many factors around, this is human, but many factors around live animals do have an effect on immunity, on immune function. That is, first of all, on the top, you see nutrition. Here in the bottom, you see the exposure to infectious pathogens, but you see also some environmental effects like here, stress from the environment, exercise, Of course, that's more important for humans. You see also obesity that can be very important for dairy cows. You see also the effects of when an animal was young, they can have suffered from several diseases and from deficiencies that can still affect the health on a later age. So we should be aware of, okay, we are going to discuss only nutrition, but some other factors are still important. And especially on herd level, we should keep this in mind. So first of all, we are going to look to the cow around calving. Okay, we are all aware of a cow around calving. That's the moment where the lactation starts. That's why we have cows to lactate or to produce meat. So this is our aim, that the cow is starting the milk production. And we all know food intake is lowest in the period in the days before and after calving. So this cow has a low feed intake. Moreover, this feed intake is very unstable. So for some cows, they still consume on a quite regular basis, but other cows, they have a fluctuating intake, and it is a higher risk of rumen disturbances. We also know that for this cow, the immune functions are depressed. So how well she's fed during the dry period, we can never avoid that immune capacity of the cow in the peri-parturient period is depressed, and that means she is at a higher risk of getting infectious diseases, and it is mastitis and endometritis, maybe also some other diseases, but those are the most important diseases. So we care really about the cow at the beginning of the lactation for these reasons. Much research last decades has focused on proper dry cow nutrition. And I'm still thinking, okay, we have some questions that are not well investigated, so that would be relevant for the future to have a further look. Okay, how do we know that immune function is involved? And we can think of that if cows are suffering also on a herd level of a too high incidence of metritis, endometritis, of mastitis, and especially mastitis that is caused by environmental bacteria. Also, retained placenta is also not a question of hygiene, but it's also a question of a disturbed immune function. So if on a certain herd you find that too many cows are suffering from endometritis and or mastitis, then you might think of an impaired immune capacity. Some farmers, they conclude themselves, okay, my cows might be suffering from impaired immune capacity. Yeah, that's their impression. I think it's also relevant to think about that, but it is of course not objectively measured. Okay, first of all, we should keep in mind that all the metabolic diseases, they are a risk factor for mastitis. So cows that are suffering from milk fever, from ketosis, especially also from udder edema, all those cows, they have a higher chance of getting mastitis. That means it's very relevant, again, to feed in the dry period very properly. I think many papers from the United States, you see there that cows are fed an excess of energy. In Western Europe, the quality of the forages has gradually increased, and as a result of that, we have too many dairy farms where the dry cows are fed a diet that is too high in energy, and doing so, this will result in more cows suffering from one or more of those metabolic diseases. So it's very simple in a certain way. We should really start to avoid metabolic diseases by proper feeding in the dry period. And one consequence of that is that we can reduce the incidence of endometritis and mastitis at the beginning of the lactation. Okay, here we have some details of how an energy deficit might affect immune capacity. From ketosis, we know that the number of leukocytes is decreasing. Chemotaxis and phagocytosis are also decreasing. Cytokine production is also decreasing. So that's a consequence of increased ketone body concentrations, and we know we have similar results that are due to increased NEFA concentration. So in general, the higher a cow is suffering from ketone bodies on non-acidified fatty acids, that will really harm immune function and make the cow more susceptible to mastitis and other infectious diseases in the period around calving. So in our country, a person who did an observational study, she found that in some herds, no cows are suffering from high concentrations of ketone bodies, but also in some herds it's 80%. So many cows might be suffering from high concentration of ketone bodies, and this is mainly found in the first 10 days after calving. So in our country, we feed the cows quite good, but even then, we have quite a number of cows that are suffering from increased levels of ketone bodies, and as we have seen previously, that can harm immune function and make cows more susceptible to mastitis. Okay, the risk factors that she found that were related to high concentration of ketone bodies, that was a higher proportion of maize silage. Then you have less cows that are suffering from ketone bodies and feeding more concentrates. So if we interpret those results, we can conclude that these are both reflecting energy intake, energy density of the diet at the beginning of the lactation. What she did not evaluate was the energy intake during the dry period. When this is too high, it will result in a lower energy intake in the first weeks after calving, and consequently, cows are more susceptible to mastitis and other infectious diseases. And she also did not consider the digestibility of the grass silage, which is a common product that is fed in our country. And she did not evaluate the starch concentration in the concentrate. And why is that important? When the starch concentration in the concentrate is higher, that is consequently resulting in a higher intake of energy, of which the cow can make propionic acid, and that will result in a lower concentration of ketone bodies. So the major characteristic of cows that are suffering from ketosis is that they are lacking ingredients in the diet of which they can make glucose. That's a result of propionic acid in the rumen and rumen undegradable starch which is digested in the small intestine. Okay, here we can see what is the effect of an energy excess in the dry period. We see cows that are fed according to the requirements, and cows that are fed somewhat above the requirements, cows that are fed according to the requirements for a dry cow. They have a better energy status in the first weeks after calving, so the energy deficit is less deep and less long compared to cows that had an energy excess in the dry period. They have a deeper deficit and a longer negative energy balance. So this put emphasis on the relevance of proper feeding during the dry period, avoid an energy excess, because that will harm forage intake, dry matter intake in the first weeks after calving, and consequently result in more of a higher concentrations of ketone bodies. So we have, this is expressed in our energy unit. Here we have some recommendations for the dry period. You see, we recommend in the last 2 weeks to increase somewhat the energy density because the forage intake is somewhat decreasing, the demands are somewhat increasing. So to meet the actual demands, it's better to give a diet that is somewhat higher in energy density, and I think then a dry cow is properly fed. As I stated before, in our country it's really the problem that not all farms have the proper quality to feed dry cows in a proper way. So in many cases the forage quality is too good for dry cows. So, as you can see, in 2015, I was on a conference in the state of New York, so that's in the United States, and I asked a veterinarian who is somewhat older than me, but he has worked here for over 1 year. His name is Jack Gard, and we went to some dairy farmers in his practice. And being on one of those farms, I asked him, okay, Jack, what do you think? What is the most important metabolic disease? And he said, subclinical hypocalcemia. So it's subclinical. We all know that your cows can suffer from hypocalcemia and lie down. They need a treatment. But cows can also suffer, and most cows will suffer from a certain degree of subclinical hypocalcemia. And one effect of subclinical hypocalcemia is that this may impair immune function. Okay. Initially, when I heard this, I was thinking, okay, cows that are suffering from hypocalcemia, people found, okay, they have a higher risk of getting mastitis. That might be caused by some factors that are important earlier in the dry period, and that might affect both. So that might affect calcium metabolism, and it might affect immune capacity. But later I find a paper, and you see it's the name of Martinez, who indeed found that an induced hypocalcemia resulted in a decreased phagocytic capacity and decreased oxidative burst. So I think it's from this study really clear that hypocalcemia is really causing depressed immune capacity. And the consequence of that is that cows that are suffering from hypocalcemia are at a higher risk of getting mastitis. So this is one example of how metabolic diseases affect other health. Okay, we will briefly discuss how we can prevent milk fever. I think you can effectively prevent milk fever without the use of salts which are high in sulfur and in chlorine. It starts with avoiding an energy excess, like I discussed earlier in this discussion. So first of all, avoid an energy excess, provide an adequate magnesium intake, and keep cows consuming forage in the period around calving. And that is a good reason you should not isolate the cows that are calving, because when they are isolated, they will still stop eating. And when they stop eating, the calcium intake is, of course, much lower. So I think these three factors, they are very important and very effective in preventing milk fever without the use of salts of a negative DCAT. So that costs more money. You have to monitor, you have to measure the pH of the urine. I hear from farmers, so they have trouble in in providing a good quantity of those salts. But essentially, I think there's no need to do so to prevent milk fever. If you give them enough magnesium, if you provide them a forage that's not too rich in energy, and if you do not isolate cows, then you will hardly suffer from milk fever. Right. Okay, so we have seen some effects of energy deficit. You must also consider a protein deficit, because the immune system really requires protein. That means amino acids. So we know from some studies that limiting essential amino acids such as methionine, they will result in more mastitis and more metritis. So that means that it is essential to avoid a protein deficit in your basal diet. That's not only to achieve a high milk yield, but it's also relevant for immune capacity. So avoid a protein deficit in your diet. So some people, they are arguing that we should feed more crude protein to dry cows. I think crude protein is a very old system. We should not use it anymore. And instead of that, we have a system in Western Europe that makes a distinction between real proteins and nitrogen that is needed in the rumen for good fermentation. I think we should keep that in mind. And essentially, we should avoid deficit of digestible protein at the diet level, and also to stimulate a good rumen function by an adequate availability of nitrogen sources that can be used by the microbes in the rumen to ferment. For some diets, you might think of a sulfur deficiency. If that is too low, the cows are not able to synthesize some essential amino acids. So you need enough nitrogen that is degraded or soluble in the rumen, but you need also enough sulfur, magnesium, and other minerals for a good rumen fermentation. And that means that will result in an adequate synthesis of proteins and essential amino acids. So in some studies in the US, there you see that dry cows are fed a diet with a huge proportion of straw in the diet. This straw is taken in the diet to reduce energy density. But I think it has one disadvantage. You should really avoid an abrupt diet change from dry cow diet to the lactation diet in order to avoid an increase of LPS, which may harm metabolism, which may also cause the more susceptible to infectious diseases. So I'm very careful. I want to avoid an abrupt diet change, and that's, I think, a good reason to limit the intake of straw in the dry cow diets, unless you feed also straw to lactating cows, but the disadvantage of straw is the low energy density. Nutrition is aim for the targets. You want to avoid deficiency, you want to avoid an excess. So an lack of soluble and degradable nitrogen is harmful for rumen fermentation, but an excess of soluble nitrogen is also harmful for cows' health. So from some studies we know that cows are more at risk for mastitis and endometritis if they are fed a diet that is too high in nitrogen that's available in the rumen. So you should really avoid that. For our country, that's really relevant because we feed a lot of grass silage, and especially when the dry matter content of the grass silage is low, then the concentration of soluble and degradable nitrogen sources can really be high, so they can really be a cause of depressed immune capacity and also of impaired fertility. Okay. Now we go back to the year that I was born, so it's 1955. And this is a book that was used on schools for future farmers. And you see, they stated at that time already that animals that are suffering from a copper deficiency, they are more at risk for infectious diseases. So that's by far not new knowledge. That's one of the trace elements that we know for decades. So a copper deficiency may increase the susceptibility of animals for infectious diseases. So that's not only copper, but also other trace elements, copper, cobalt, zinc, and in 85, that was the first time that selenium deficiency was diagnosed in our country. And you may also think of an iodine deficiency. It may also impair immune function. So in general, we should feed cows with an adequate amount of copper, cobalt, zinc, selenium, iodine, in order to have a good production, a good health, including a good immune competence. Okay. If you are going to visit a farm, but they have complaints with health, with fertility, then you can think of a deficiency. And when can you conclude that a deficiency of one of the trace elements was really the cause of the complaints on that dairy particular farm? So you can conclude, you can observe that you find some health and fertility disorders that are really related to a deficiency of one or more trace elements. So you can find knowledge in the books. A second step is often that people measure the concentration of one or more trace elements in the blood. And if they are low, then you can think, okay, cows might suffer from a deficiency. But even then, you are not sure. Only when you have supplemented one or more trace elements of which you think they might be the cause of the problems, and you find out that after the supplementation, the health of cows is really improving, or the fertility is really improving, only then you can conclude that the deficiency was really the cause of the complaints that you observed on the specific dairy farm. For me, in '89, I was involved in a herd with 100% mastitis. That was in the north of the country. And I concluded, okay, your status from selenium and copper is really not very poor, but it is marginal. So you should feed somewhat more trace elements. And from 100% mastitis, they moved within 1 month to 0% mastitis. So I'm welcome there. So the farmer was, of course, happy with my advice. But it was '89, so it has been a long time until we discovered really the relevance of an adequate status with regard to trace elements for a good immune capacity. Okay, what might you think of a deficiency? Here you see that the wood is being consumed by the young stock. So they are suffering from, in this case, of a copper deficiency, and they start to bite in wooden parts. Maybe they try to find copper, but if you notice this, then you can think of a copper deficiency. This is more or less the same. You see that the wood is really damaged by the young stock. So if you see something like this, you might think of a deficiency. Our animals, they should be black and white. And if the white is not really white, but yellow, then you can think also of a deficiency of copper or cobalt. And this animal, you see the problems around the feet. You could think of a deficiency of calcium or copper. In this case, it was a very simple deficiency of calcium. So you have really different symptoms that makes you think of, okay, should I consider a deficiency in the diet? Okay, you can supply minerals by mineral mixtures. Ideally, the composition of mineral mixtures should be based on analysis of the forage from the specific region. But you can also increase the concentration of different minerals by fertilization. So if you have done a proper fertilization, that will result in higher concentrations of different minerals in the forage. It's not only the concentration of the minerals in the soil, but also factors such as pH or organic matter concentration. They can also affect the uptake by the plant of the minerals from the soil. And you see here that fertilization can really increase, in this case, the copper concentration in the soil, but from a certain level, copper concentration in the forage, in this case in the grass, will not further increase. So here you have more or less the maximum that can be achieved by proper fertilization of, in this case, of copper in the soil. You can also think of cobalt supplementation, of selenium supplementation to increase the stock in the soil and consequently to a certain level the concentration in the forage. So I think it starts with fertilization and after that you can make a choice for a proper composition of a mineral mixture, to be sure that all the minerals that animals need are provided. Okay, if you look to the books, you see a wide variety in recommendations. It's always expressed as a minimum and a maximum. And for further research, we can use immune parameters to define a narrow range between the minimum and the maximum. So we have actually a wide variety, and using immune parameters. And after some weeks, I will have my presentation for the audience when I'm stopping my work here. I will discuss this again or present this again, because the standards we use in our country, they are very old, and we should adapt them to actual conditions. How can we do so? By doing experiments and using immune function to define more accurately the requirements of the cattle in 2022. Okay, there's much, I would say, I'm thinking of the word, but you read a lot of papers in which two selenium sources are compared. That is an organic selenium source and an anorganic. And in general, you see that the concentrations of selenium in milk or in blood are very faster increasing when you use an organic selenium source compared to an inorganic selenium source. But I was thinking, reading those papers, I was thinking, okay, the concentration is increasing much faster, but we are not feeding selenium or another trace element for a fast increase of the concentration in the blood or in the milk, but we are supplementing animals with trace elements to stimulate immune function. So I find some papers in which they did a comparison with immune functions on animals that are fed inorganic or organic selenium, and there was no difference reported with regard to phagocytosis and killing of neutrophils. So I think if you look to the function of those immune cells, then we cannot detect a difference based on selenium that is from an organic or an inorganic source. And if there would be one, then we should realize that selenium in the forages is also in organic forms available. So it's not a situation of only organic or only inorganic trace element sources. The trace elements that are present in the forages, they are bound to organic forms. And if that would be an advantage, then you have an advantage of the trace elements that are found in your forages based or combined with organic forms. This is to show that there are really differences in recommendations for the selenium requirements. So that's really something you should consider in your own country. What is a proper selenium requirement? There's a wide variety. I'm not sure that the NSA requirements are really well. They can too be high, and the first consequence of an excess of selenium is that immune capacity is also decreasing. So we know that selenium is a toxic element, so we should really avoid a selenium excess. So we should not simply copy standards from other countries. We can look at them, but not simply copying them, and we should be aware of avoiding an excess, especially of selenium. In our country, we measure the selenium status by measuring the activity of one enzyme, that's glutathione peroxidase. We have good standards for that. I think we should really aim for, if there are complaints that are related to selenium, I cannot read it, but it's 220 and at maximum 500 units. And there's no reason to aim for higher values. And also the reference value that is the National Health Service is providing, I think this 120 is too low. we should really aim for 250 or 220. And that's done based on this Belgian investigator who really recommend we should aim for values when there are complaints of values above 250. Okay, we do not have to face only trace element deficiencies. Ruminants, in general, they have enough iron in their feed. And it's a general accepted concept that humans and animals can suffer from an iron overload. Especially iron is a potential pro-oxidant, so it can increase oxidative damage. So we should avoid an excess of iron. It can also stimulate the growth of pathogens. So if it is not necessary, we should not supplement cows with iron. So iron needs are in general, they are meat, they are met. And if cows are suffering from anemia, that is in general not caused by an iron deficiency, but you can think of copper and or of cobalt. Okay, in some parts of the country, farmers give too much copper. That is resulting in symptoms that are not very clear, so you are not immediately thinking of a copper excess. But on the diet, they feed for a long period a too high concentration of copper, and it can be diagnosed by liver functions. There you can measure the copper concentration in the liver tissue. Okay, this is the last aspect that we are going to consider. Of course, we know that vitamin E is needed for a good health. We know it from one disease, that's white muscle disease, when calves are going out to a good pasture. Pasture is rich in polyunsaturated fatty acids. But vitamin E is also related to retained placenta, to mastitis, to endometritis, and also to one fertility disorder, and that is cystic ovarian follicles. And I think more important than vitamin E for cystic ovarian follicles is a lack of glucose precursors, so in general, a lack of starch in the diet. Also, we have several immune functions are affected by a vitamin E deficiency, that's shown here. A meta-analysis that was done some years ago, it really shows that an adequate vitamin E status reduces the risk for clinical mastitis, reduces also the somatic cell count. But in some experiments, we do not find an effect of a high concentration of vitamin E in the dry period. So, I'm not surprised by this finding, because many other factors have an effect on exposure and on immunity. So it's not by far not always necessary to supplement dry cows this high concentration of vitamin E. Here you see different authors, and many of them, they recommend 1,000 international units during the dry period, and during lactation 500 to at maximum 1,200 international units per day. I think the recommendation from Politis, that's somebody from Greece, is very wise, because he made a wide variety. If the forage is low in vitamin E, then you should choose for a higher doses of vitamin E compared to if you are feeding a forage that is much higher in vitamin E. Okay. This is the last thing I want to show to you. Okay, we have discussed briefly discussed several factors. You might also think of cows that are excessively fat. They are more at risk for infectious diseases. I did not discuss vitamin D. In some diets, you may think of beta-carotene that can also improve immune capacity, and the immune status of neonatal calves is also affected by proper dry cow feeding. Okay, it stops here, I think so, yeah. So I think we should go now to discussion, to questions of the audience.
Thank you so
Okay.
Thank you so much, Paul, for your nice informative presentation and describing the effect of nutrition and the immunity towards the intermammary infection and other health problem in dairy cows. Thank you so much. Now this is time for the discussion with our discussant. At first, I'd like to invite Professor Dr. Abdul Samad sir from India to give remarks on today's discussion, and you are also welcome to ask any question to our speaker today. Sir.
Thank you very much, Dobbelaar. Excellent presentation from Paul. I think you know what topics he has covered.
Uh, I'm sorry, sir. We cannot hear you properly because there is some noise from your side, sir. Would you please check, sir?
Is it okay now?
No, sir. It's not okay, sir.
Hello?
Yes, sir. It's not okay, sir. There is still some noise.
Noise maybe come from laptop side. Oh, so it should be connected with the headphone.
Yeah, so I have removed now. the
Nee.
external mic. Can you still hear?
It's still very noisy. Yeah.
Maybe Virago, you can go over to another speaker and by the time the slide system, please.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Okay. I will.
Oh.
We'll go back to Samad sir again after solving the technical problem. Now, at this moment, I would like to invite Dr. Shafiqur Rahman Shoshi sir for giving remarks on today's discussion, and you are also welcome to ask any question to our honorable speaker, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Paul, for a nice presentation and very in-depth information regarding immunity and mastitis, especially in dairy cows. Especially, I would like to convey our thanks and gratitude to Paul because in Bangladesh we are facing a lot of problem and especially in the dairy cows management and mastitis and as well as the immunity.
Okay.
Actually, our dairy management system is totally traditional last 20 years, but since last 5 years, it is increasing day by day due to some good intervention from Udder Health Bangladesh side. Especially, all credit goes to the international personnel and Professor Dr. Mizan and Delaware because through this arrangement, this type of training program or workshop or seminar, our participant and our stakeholder is learning a lot from this side one by one. Especially, our farmers and entrepreneur are habituated to feed the animal on thumb rule basis. Just they are providing some concentrate and some green fodder or rice straw, something like that. They don't calculate the energy, protein, especially the trace minerals like you show the copper, calcium, selenium, and even iodine. We don't think about the iodine. So from your presentation, we learn a lot. We believe this kind of information will help a lot to our farmers and we will benefit it from you. I
Okay.
think all credit goes to the Dr. Paul and thanks to Dr. Mizan and Dalwar who arrange this program and it will directly help our farmer and we so-called expert from the session. We learn a lot. We can deliver this knowledge to our stakeholder, entrepreneur, and farmer. Thank you, Dr. Paul.
Okay. Now, thank you for your nice words, and I'd like to do so. Yeah, thank you, Deloa, for inviting me. Yeah. Okay, it's always yeah, nice if you can transmit your knowledge to people for who it's helpful. So if it can improve the health and productivity of your cattle, it's always nice, relevant. Yeah.
I have some question, but I think from the old comments, Delwar, I will ask the question later on. And you
Okay.
can text comments from Professor Mizan, Professor Redwan Pasha, and Samad, and the Shukanto Bhumik. So we'll ask our question later on. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Okay, sir, you are always welcome. Now, maybe there is still some problem from Samad's laptop. That's why I will just paste the question and I will show you the question in the screen. Then Paul will answer the question.
Yeah.
Just a minute. It's coming. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. So this is the question or remarks from Samad sir. He said, in my practice in India, I find phosphorus deficiency more common than calcium deficiency. The region of underdiagnosis could be depends on serum inorganic phosphorus, which is reflected last in several cases severe cases. Instead, I do total cellular phosphorus. So, what is your answer regarding the questions, Paul?
What is the question? Yeah.
So, this is actually the scenario, the case scenario. So, do you have the any comments towards the case scenario?
Yeah. No, this is really the opposite of the situation in our Western European countries. There we do not have a deficiency of phosphor. I know it from abroad. I've done some experiments with a low phosphor intake. And indeed, phosphor concentration in the serum does not reflect phosphorus status. Then you should really take measures or in the muscle or in the cells, in the tissue, and not you cannot rely on phosphor concentration in the serum. That's really true. But in general, I think if you are thinking of a deficiency, you should not rely only on blood parameters, but also on analysis of your diet and combine results. And you have clinical symptoms of which you think, okay, we can relate that to a phosphor deficiency or something else. So essentially, my answer is, yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Paul,
Yeah. Yeah.
for your sharing your experience towards the case scenario. If anything else, Samasa can type in the chat box, then I will share with the Paul again. Now I would like to invite Shukanto Dada to ask any question and remarks regarding today's discussion. Dada, can you hear me? I'm audible to you. Please unmute yourself. Please unmute yourself fast, please.
Okay.
Okay, maybe there is some technical problem. I'm sorry. Now I would like to invite Dr. Ridwan Pasha. Pasha, do you have any remarks and questions to our speaker?
Am I audible? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Paul. It was a fantastic presentation, and good afternoon from good evening from Bangladesh, actually. So I would like to say that this presentation was really fantastic. I've learned a lot because I've never seen so described manner of any presentation in terms of the micronutrients, especially. Um, what I want to share some of my experience, and I have a question later. So the experiences for a lot of years, I'm practicing in Bangladesh. Actually, not a very big practitioner, but I'm practicing so-so. So for a few years, not okay, 1.5 years maybe, we are seeing the rise of mastitis cases in the farms of Chittagong. It was before, mastitis was a lot in the dairy farms before, but the clinical cases have risen, especially in my farms. So I was trying to find out what is the problem, because before that there was not so much incidence of mastitis, especially the clinical ones. But right now there are many more clinical mastitis. So what I've come in conclusion, though I didn't research more about that, that because of the fluctuating prices of the feed prices have been increased by 35 or 40% in recent years in Bangladesh. So what the farmers are trying to do, they are focusing on the dry matter right now, not on the nutrition. So they are trying to feed the cows irrespective to the nutrition amount. So now they are procuring the feeds which are uh, before they didn't buy those because those feed are actually less nutritious. But right now they are giving those feed because they have to maintain the price. So what I'm thinking from my point of view is that though I didn't analyze those feeds in proximate, but what I'm trying to find out, or I came in conclusion that maybe those feeds are actually low in the micronutrients, especially the vitamins and minerals, which are improving the immune functions. And right now, the cows are not getting those nutrients for their immune function, and mastitis cases are growing. So I think we need more research on the micronutrients. Especially, we need the soil test. But I would like to agree with Dr. Samar sir. He also talked about that in India they are finding more phosphorus deficiency. So when I was in Tanuvas, the Tamil Nadu Veterinary Animal Sciences University, I went there for internship in 2016. I saw that they have a map of whole Tamil Nadu state, and they have a district-wise map that where some minerals is deficit. Maybe in this district zinc is less in the soil. In this district the manganese is less. In this district the copper is less. So that's how they are prescribing the farmers that you have to increase more copper in your soil or in the diet. So we need more research on those about this. I have these are my experiences and my thoughts. But now about my question is to Dr. Paul, is that in your country, how are you preventing these problems? Do you go for routine biochemistry of the blood of the animals, or you just go for proximate, or you just add the nutrients in the soil? What do you do? Thank you.
Yeah, okay. That's a good question. We say it starts with the soil. So let's say half a century ago, then we had projects, and they were called soil, plant, animal. And that means we measured the concentration of copper and cobalt, for instance, in the soil. Then we measured them on the same paddocks, the concentration at that time only in the grass. And thirdly, we measured the concentration in the animal. Doing so, we wanted to have a good basis for fertilization. That means, like the graph I've shown, that we were aware of, okay, how much copper, cobalt, and sodium, and so on should be in the soil to achieve a proper concentration in the grass. That is step one. And step two is, it's very common to supplement animals with a mineral mixture, with calcium, with phosphor, with sodium, with magnesium, and vitamin E. And the concentration of the different elements and vitamins is depending on the forage composition. So we have, in fact, two steps. Measure how much minerals are available in the soil, available for plant growth, which you will find back in your grass and in your maize silage. So we also analyze the forages before they are fed. That means they are analyzed also for the macro and trace elements. And doing so, we can make a proper choice for a mineral mixture that should be supplemented to lactating cows and sometimes also to dry cows. So in fact, I would start, listening to your explanation, I would start with forage analysis and measure reaction of your animals. If the milk yield is going up, then it's a good sign that before that you were feeding below standards. And if you have a response that suggests that a higher intake is effective, and secondly, you can consider health effects. But it's all multifactorial. If you can have a farm with a low vitamin E status because the exposure to pathogens is low, for instance, and the opposite. So it's really a complex situation that makes it also nice, but for practical circumstances, you have to be aware of that. So you can have some animals in your barn with who you do some measurements, but that does not necessarily mean that you will also be able to detect effects on health, because for those type of studies you need more herds and more animals. But if you want, is my answer adequate, or you have more thinking?
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah. That's what I wanted to know. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Pasha, for your questions, and thanks to Paul as well. Now, Professor Samasar also asked a question that I have shared in the screen. So the question is, any comments on stability of vitamin A and D in the ration formulation? In human side, I have read many papers that there is on shelf life of this vitamin in both aqueous and powder formulations. As a result, human formulations are shifting to micro encapsulated forms. So, what is your comment regarding the questions, Paul?
Yeah, I see it, but in our country we do not so. We have mineral mixtures. It's sort of a dry powder, and then the vitamin A, vitamin D, and vitamin E, they are all included in the mineral mixture and not in micro encapsulated forms. No, really not. But there's of course one difference. In your country, the environmental temperature is higher, so I think you should store your mineral mixtures really on a place that they are not heated, because that will cause a breakdown of especially your vitamin E. Yeah, but this is really, for me, unknown with regard to animal nutrition. I've read many papers about vitamin E. You might consider the type of vitamin E. It can be linked to several groups to increase the stability, but we never feed micro-encapsulated forms of one of those vitamins.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Paul, for your answer. Now, I would like to invite Dr. Shokanto Bomik Dada for your remarks and the questions to Paul. Dada, I'm audible to you?
Dr. Tudor. Dr. Tudor, can you hear me?
Yeah. Please go on.
Great. Who's talking?
Thank you. Thanks to our Bangladesh to give me opportunity to enter this nice discussion. Was given by the Dr. Paul. I'm very much lucky, and it will be pleasure from the Paul having a nice slide presentation from him. and gaining some information regarding mastitis. Mastitis relating to immune function and depending on the some nutritional factor that are very much closely related to the immunity as well as mastitis occurrence in what is said earlier by the Dr. Shubhikuram Shoshi sir, which is in our country's dairying perspective, very much regardlessly a traditional system, a dairy system, and dairy farming management is whether in the dry period or early lactating period, there is negligency by the farmers themselves, uh, drying challenge, or there is lacking in providing some macrominerals or trace minerals in their rations. And successively, mastitis occurrence in our country, incidence and incidence rate is very much higher in our country, dairy. And these are the which is said that there are trace minerals and limiting amino acids or protein energy rations, which is very much important in dairy rations, and which is very much necessarily to our veterinarian also. And we can easily scale the farmer by giving them information based on your information. It's very much informative, I think. Again, uh, giving thanks to you for sharing some informative knowledge. And I have a single questions about whether in early lactation and mid lactation in a cow, in our country's perspective, 50 to 20 liters milking is a high yielding in our country, and protein energy ratio in cows, whether there is there is any relation between protein and energy
I'm sorry. There is
Yeah.
some technical problem. Actually, he's just out in the studio due to the technical problem. Okay, so actually we have another question from another professor. He's a professor from another university in Bangladesh. So he asked that the retail placenta is a very common problem in dairy cows. Sorry, retail fetal membrane is very common problem in dairy cows. Is there an influence of serum selenium during or before pasteurization?
Yeah,
Or,
clearly, really.
yeah, okay.
So it's both. If you have a problem with a too high incidence of retained fetal membranes, you should really consider selenium intake during the dry period and vitamin E intake also during the dry period. But I should start with selenium intake, because I think that's much cheaper to increase the selenium intake and avoid an excess. But if you are suffering from this this problem, retained fetal membranes, you should really think of indeed selenium and vitamin E deficiency. And the answer is a proper intake of both, but start with selenium during the dry period. Yeah, without any doubt. And avoid an iron excess if that might be relevant.
Thank you. Thank you so
Yeah,
much for your
yeah.
concrete answer. Now, Shukanta Dada again in our studio. Dada, could you please continue your question?
there is some internet connection problem
Uh,
there.
yeah,
No,
it's okay.
And
Now carry on.
again, I repeat my questions. In early lactation of a high yielding, in our country, 20 liters milk or 25 liters milking cow, is there any relation in protein and energy ratio in ration? Protein energy ratio that markedly affects the immune function or mastitis in reflecting in dry period in cow. First of all, protein energy ratio in early lactation.
yeah, but I do not understand the question.
Dada, could you please um, again ask the question in briefly or in short? Again, would you please repeat the question in shortly, Dada? Hello.
Maybe you can write in the chat box. That will be easier.
Okay.
In
Okay.
can you hear like can you hear me?
Yeah. You can type in the chat box. Then I will ask by or
Yeah.
share the question by screen. Okay.
Protein and energy ratio. Protein and energy ratio. Protein and
Yeah.
energy ratio in ration of a high-yielding animal. What could be reflecting on the prevention of mastitis in early lactating cow? In early lactation.
Um, essentially, I think you want to avoid the deficiency of energy, and you want to avoid deficiency of protein, but you also want to avoid an excess of at least soluble protein. So it's essentially aim for feeding according to standards. And that's not only energy, that's not only protein, but it is both. And trace elements, and it starts with proper feeding in the dry period. So I think it's not a question of energy intake or protein intake. It's really a question of feed them according to energy standards, to protein standards, avoid an excess, avoid a deficiency. And what is a good ratio between those two? It depends on the system that you are using. And we are using a system that is developed in Western Europe. I think you will have another system. But yeah, avoid an excess, avoid a deficiency with regard to and energy and protein. But, yeah, so I cannot say that there's a proper ratio between those two. It depends really on the system that you are using. If you want to express that in a certain ratio, but essentially feed them according to standards. And it starts with dry period. Again, feed them according to standards, avoid an energy excess, avoid an energy deficiency. So
Dada,
essentially, yeah.
do you have any supplementary question, Dada? Do you have any supplementary question? Okay.
Okay. Abdullah, then you can carry on. Thank you, Dr. Paul.
So, our dear guest, you know that this is the last week of successful job life.
I have now any
Actually.
questions now.
Sorry.
No.
Okay, so I congratulate the Paul for serving the nations for about 43 years, and now I leave the floor to Professor Nizar Rahman, sir. Sir.
Thank you very much. I think and Dobbelaar, Dr. Shofik wanted to ask some questions, if he has any.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, most of the question from my side is already covered from various corner. But I would like to share some observation with Mr. Paul, because dairy in your country and dairy in Bangladesh or dairy in some other country, India, is not the same, because
Okay.
dairy management is quite different in Bangladesh. If you don't mind, I would like to share some practical experience from the field, because I was very much aligned with the field activities in last 20 years. Our farmer are habituated, our entrepreneurs or farm owner are habituated to offer the feed offer the same feed for calf, same feed for the heifer, same feed for the dry cow, same feed for the lactating animal. So very few farm, less than 5% are little bit scared about the difference between heifer ration and lactating ration, I mean the milking ration, and the dry cow ration. So we are facing a challenging. We are advising our farmers to make the difference, because, as your presentation says, excess energy in the dry period will make the problem for the pasteurization or early lactation, or even in the calving, during calving. So our farmer don't care about the different. And what a question asked by the Shukanta Bhumik, Dr. Shukanta Bhumik, he wanted to say about the protein and energy requirement, not balance. Our farmer is not habituated to make to identify the requirement of the animal, because one cow is giving 15-liter milks and another cow is giving 5-liter milks, so they offer the same amount of feed. They don't determine the energy and protein differently. So the energy and protein is different, requirement is different for the different cow and different stage as well. And what we know from your presentation today, it is very precise from the microminerals. I mean the phosphorus, calcium, cobalt, iodine, selenium. So we are not thinking about these tests, but what we found in the field, we have some manufacturer company for the both feed side as well as the drug side. I mean the vitamin minerals supplement providers. So there are a lot of companies, they are authorized by the government or the legislative authority. They provide some vitamin minerals, whatever they declared in the literature, but it is not actually found in the content. So we are facing a lot of challenge. Side by side, a great problem in the dairy cows is the calving and the retained placenta. Calving means we always need the assisted birth. Normal calf delivery is very uncommon in respect of the farm condition. I mean the farmer who have more than 5 cows, 10, 20, and single cows who rear the cows in the grazing land. Sometimes its calving delivery is normal, and if the assisted bath is required, consequently the recent placenta is occurred. So, and the cow will not show the postpartum heat at the standard time within 60 days or 90 days. So, it is very common in Bangladesh, the retained placenta and assisted bath, as well as the delay postpartum heat. So, as a result, our farmers losing using a lot of feeds, and we are getting less amount of calf with the stipulated time. And we are working on it. But some farmer, I mean the educated young generation, they are learning from the online platform and the program like today's. They are learning a lot from the very precise form, the knowledge they are applying. They want to apply and they ask a lot of questions. People like Dr. Mizan, me, and Dr. Delwar. So we are thinking about this, and today's program will help us a lot. I think this type of program we have to arrange more and more, and Dr. Mizan will take initiative for that. And I am very much happy to have this type of program. And on behalf of the government side, on behalf of the farmer side, I would like to convey our gratitude and thanks to Professor Dr. Paul Mizan and our Professor Samat from India. Thank you for your nice deliberation.
Okay. Now, we say
Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay.
Yeah, please go on if you want to say something.
No, yeah. Thank you for your nice words, and I'd like to do so because it can help you. Then, okay, we have that knowledge available. If we can share it with other people, that's always good to do. So, yeah, I've liked to do so. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you
Yeah.
very much, Paul. Can you hear me? Because
Yeah.
I'm not using headphone.
No, it's good. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much for your nice presentation, and we all wish you a very, very good retired life because you have served a long time in your country in the dairy sector. I think it is 43 years. You told that.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yes, I think we'll enjoy it. Maybe you can. Do you still want to work? Because Papa Samad is here, and he got retirement in 2014, and I think now he started work in a newly. He's just started working in a new manner with a new energy, more energy. He's working now. So
Oh,
what is your next target? Yeah, next plan now after
Dr.
retirement?
Mizan, Dr. Mizan, an
Yeah.
expert or and a doctor will never be retired until death.
Yes.
yeah. But Dr. Misa, is that a question to who? To?
Yes, that's to ask you. What is your next plan to do?
Yeah.
Yes, just going to retirement. Will not do anything, or going to do still continue?
No, I think if the lower, I have his email address. I will send my email address, and then we can communicate.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think it was a very nice presentation from your side.
Yeah.
And as you have seen that, Professor Samad sir has told us that in India, phosphorus deficiency is a problem.
Yeah.
But maybe it is a different scenario. Yeah, it is a different scenario in Europe. But we don't know in Bangladesh. Maybe I am right. Maybe Shopik bhai can correct me. We don't know. We never check it. What we have in the soil, what the plants or grass is getting from the soil, and what is the status of the micro minerals and other things in the blood of the animals. Maybe we don't check it so systematically, and maybe it is necessary. I think it is time to check it systematically. Then we can actually at least understand what we should give to our dairy farmers and what is the problem actually is existing in the current dairy condition. So we should know it.
Yeah.
We should practice it, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have nothing.
Yeah.
So far I know. I think Shobik bhai can know his soil. We don't check it. Even we have several modern dairy farm in Bangladesh. Even they don't check it. What is the status of their different micro minerals in the farms, in their grass, and in the land where they are growing the grasses. It is not a practice. I think we should do it. From your presentation, for the land that we should practice it and we should know. And if we know it, maybe we can control or prevent many diseases, metabolic diseases, or diseases like mastitis, infectious diseases in our dairy farms, because we have lots of diseases. We have lots of diseases in our dairy condition because our farming system is mainly intensive. We have the other problems like the nutrition. Nowadays, the price is very, very high. So we should have a systemic approach, holistic approach to know everything. It will be easier for us.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. Thank you very much for giving us your time. Maybe you have to go now.
Yeah. I think we have some 5 minutes and then we shall stop.
Yeah. So thank you very much from our side, and thank you very much, Dobbelaar, to bring Paul in our platform. Thank you very much.
I will send my presentation to the lower.
Yeah. And then I will share with the other guest
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
audience.
Yeah, Dobbelaar, can you share the presentation with us?
Yeah, sure, sir. I will.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, sir.
We send it to you as a PDF format, and then you can. It's free for
Okay, no
use.
problem. We want to
Yeah.
know your information, not
Yeah.
nothing else. Okay.
That's good. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Okay.
And
Thank
Dobbelaar,
you. Yes. Yeah.
are you happy to be back in your country?
Yes, I am happy, and I'm also happy to pass a very wonderful time with you and the other colleagues in the Utrecht.
Ah,
And
yeah.
I'm really grateful to you guys, and especially you because you visited me farms and show me everything in the farm. Yeah, so I'm really grateful to you.
Okay. That's good to hear. Yeah.
So I'm wishing a very good farewell program and very good life after retirement.
Okay. Thank you. Huh? Okay. Um,
Okay.
okay. We can have contact later by email, and I will send you the presentation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
And, okay. That's good. Let me finish it now. Huh?
Yes.
Yes, I think
Then
so.
yeah.
Okay. No, it was. I'm happy to have done this meeting to share this thinking with you, and yeah, people from even not only Bangladesh but also from India. So okay,
Okay. Bye.
that's good. Bye. Yeah. Yeah.
Bye.
See you next time. সালামালাইকুম শফিক ভাই, তাহলে আপনার সাথে পরে কথা বলবো না, আমি একটু সামাজ স্যারের সাথে কথা বলি দেখি।